We have several more NHL signings to discuss today, including the Toronto Maple Leafs announcing signing of 7 players. Plus, we also have deals for the Calgary Flames and the Washington Capitals. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more breaking news with some NHL signings to discuss here today. Let's get started here first with the Washington Capitals signing defenseman Christian Djoos to a 1-year contract of $1.25 million, which was awarded through the salary arbitration process. It's kind of hard to imagine a contract of this amount that had to go through the arbitration process. I wonder how far apart they actually were here. Christian Djoos has certainly proven to be a valuable NHL defenseman at this point. He's still young, still learning, but really overall for $1.25 million, it's hard to imagine this ended up going to arbitration, but at least that case is now closed and the Capitals can get him under contract on a 1-year deal. He will still be a restricted free agent at the end of this contract. The Calgary Flames and forward Sam Bennett have come to terms on a new contract for him for 2 years. He was scheduled for salary arbitration as well, coming up here in a couple of days' time, but of course that hearing will now be canceled and will not be required. His annual value over the next 2 years will be $2.55 million, and he'll still be a restricted free agent as well at the end of this contract. Now, as we've talked about before, Sam Bennett really hasn't turned out to be the offensive player he was in junior, but he certainly has kind of carved out a good spot with the Flames in that bottom six, and a different kind of role than many people expected to see him in the NHL, but at least he's been a regular player now. He's got a few years under his belt, and right now I know the Flames have a lot of other decisions to make going forward. They got to sign Matthew Tkachuk, they still have to sign goaltender David Rittich, and they don't really have a whole lot of cap space. There's been a lot of trade rumors around what they might do. Having him under contract at a decent value like this for the next couple of years might increase his trade value, but I really don't think he would be the one to go. Ideally, I think they're probably going to be looking at other players, maybe like a Michael Frolik or somebody on that blue line like a TJ Brody or Travis Hamonic. I mean, Brody was really close to being traded before to the Maple Leafs because of the Nazem Kadri no trade clause. That deal never went through, but we'll see what the Flames do. But they're not done here. Signing Bennett's to start, but they still have a couple more big ones left, and then they're going to have to likely move out some salary to make it all work and be cap compliant. Now, as I mentioned, the Toronto Maple Leafs have announced a signing of 7 players. Yes, that's right, 7 players. Now, a few of these we had already kind of heard about before. We even discussed a little bit in other videos. They just hadn't officially made the announcements here, but they decided to get all these out of the way here at once. Obviously, we saw the Leafs make that trade with Vegas just here in the last day or so for David Clarkson, bringing back that contract back to the Leafs in exchange for Garrett Sparks. So that created a situation where they're certainly going to be using a lot of long-term injury reserve funds to kind of accomplish everything they need to do and be cap compliant when the season starts. Of course, Mitch Marner is still the big contract out there that is not yet resolved, and really based on everything that the Leafs have done, based on their cap situation as of now, I would not be surprised if Mitch Marner does not sign until the season opens and they can officially get Clarkson and Horton's contracts officially on LTIR and open up the necessary space to get him under contract. So I guess we'll see. But let's jump into the 7 players here that they do have under contract. First up, they signed forward Nick Shore, who was bounced to run in the NHL before, played with the LA Kings for a few years. Then he split some time between Ottawa and Calgary. He spent last year in the KHL. More than likely, Nick Shore will end up playing for the Marlies, but he is an experienced guy, has a fair bit of NHL experience, and of course in the KHL too. So he could be a call-up option for the Maple Leafs. They're certainly going to have a very different looking middle and bottom six part of the lineup here, depending on injuries and whatnot. Obviously, they're going to have some big-time contracts and kind of filter around a lot of these cheaper contracts to kind of fill in some spots here and there. So Nick Shore more than likely spends most of the year with the Marlies, but is an option for them. They also signed Kenny Agostino as well. He split last year between Montreal and New Jersey. Now his contract is a one-way deal for 2 years, but if he ends up being sent to the minors, he would have to clear waivers first, but he more than likely does get a roster spot at a training camp, likely on a fourth line type of role. Agostino is one of the contracts we had talked about before that we really had been announced through social media, through NHL insiders, but the Leafs hadn't formally made the announcement here as of yet. They've also signed forward Garrett Wilson, who spent the last few years with the Penguins organization, mostly playing in the American Hockey League, but did get a bunch of games in last season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He signed to a 1-year contract at the league minimum here as well. He very well could be another guy like Nick Shore to be like a veteran presence with the Toronto Marlies, possibly be a call-up option. You never know, he might get a spot out of camp, but unlikely. They kind of have a lot of forwards now who can battle for those third and fourth line duties. Of course, they're going to go into the season with a couple injuries as well, like Zach Hyman, for instance, likely doesn't start the season. Now, they've also signed forward Pontus Aberg to a one-year, one-way deal at $700K as well. I really do like this signing. But Aberg's a player who certainly has a lot of offensive abilities. Just hasn't really been able to find a consistent groove in the NHL yet. He's bounced around. He was with the Anaheim Ducks, played with the Minnesota Wild a little bit last year. I was kind of surprised he didn't get a qualifying offer, but he ended up becoming a UFA through that process of not being qualified as a restricted free agent. So he gets a chance here with the Leafs as well. A very low-risk deal, and he has shown enough potential in the past that hopefully things will finally come together for him. Aberg very well could turn out to be a steal of a signing, but at the same time, in case it doesn't work out, it's really a very low-risk deal from the Leafs side as well. They've also signed defenseman Kevin Gravel, who's been with the Oilers organization for the last little while. Mostly been a minor league defenseman, but does have a little bit of NHL experience. Again, likely another veteran guy to play with the Marlies organization. They've also signed Tyler Gaudette, who spent the last couple of years with the Nashville Predators organization, mostly in the American Hockey League. He, as well, will likely be a member of the Toronto Marlies. They've also signed Kalle Kosila, who's been with the Anaheim Ducks organization, mostly playing with the San Diego Gulls organization in the American Hockey League, but does have some NHL experience. He's had some terrific stats in the American Hockey League. Of course, the San Diego Gulls have had a really strong team in the AHL the last few years. So he's had a chance to get some great coaching down there under Dallas Eakins and has had a lot of success at the American Hockey League level. So we'll see if he's an option for an NHL spot or very well could end up at the Marlies as well. But either way, these are a lot of interesting signings by the Leafs. Obviously, none of these guys are big flashy names that are going to have, a huge impact, but they very well could all be extra depth options for the Leafs at the NHL level, or kind of stack the Marlies a little bit with some decent experienced guys to kind of round out their AHL team for the Toronto Marlies. So that is all your NHL signings for today. Even though the Leafs had 7 signings, nothing too significant, nothing too crazy, and some of these we had heard from before. So let me know what you think down below in the comment section of these signings. As we head towards more of these NHL restricted free agent arbitration dates, we likely will have some more of these announcements as well. Like I said, 4 to 5 typically come to terms on their own before the hearing takes place. That's 2 settlements we've made so far through arbitration this season. Christian Djoos, before that Andrew Copp. We'll see if any of these other ones make it that far or if they get signed here on their own. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. We cover all the breaking news from around the NHL. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.